Also, hello everybody. Good afternoon or
Right.
good morning.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Local time.
Thank you for joining the working group AI Conformance meeting. And we have weekly meeting. And today is August 14th, 2025. And keep in mind that this meeting will be recorded and we're following the CNCF Code of Conduct. I also enabled the transcript. I believe it's on, right? Yeah, so let's get started. And George, do you want to take the first few minutes?
Yeah. So after the last meeting, this group has grown so much that I feel some of you, a lot of people were asking, hey, can we get the CNCF 10,000 foot view overview thing again? Because many of you also pointed out that we did get a lot of work done last session, but that document is starting to really frighten me. And KubeCon is coming up, so I thought I'd reiterate what it is we're trying to solve here because I don't want to say that we're bike shedding, but we know who we are. I am not in a good mood. I just found out about 15 minutes ago that Rodolfo Martinez passed away, one of our CNCF ambassadors. I have put the link to his memorial in the chat. Sorry to start off this way, but well, everyone's already kind of talking about it, and I wanted to ensure that I put that there. The problem we are trying to solve with this working group is we were at KubeCon and one of the hyperscale vendors came to us and said, the end users are giving us their feedback and they're building things and it's wrong. It's going to cost, we're doing things wrong, right? The kind of thing that you hear at a KubeCon when you're talking. And an end user turned around and said, oh man, you would not believe the amount of money we spent doing foobar baz before we realized this. Standards, it's about time we standardize things. So it kind of started off with an informal discussion at KubeCon. And from the CNCF level, what we really wanted to do is put together people in a room. But we also had lessons that we had learned from Kubernetes conformance in the past. So for Atlanta, what we are looking for as a deliverable is a rough draft of an AI conformance program for cloud native. And that is what this document is. We have recognized that over the next 3 to 5 years, however long it takes, that we will end up talking about each of these features like we did the last session and things like that. So what I would like to reiterate that the intent that we're trying to send when we announce this at KubeCon in Atlanta in November is customer confidence more than anything else. They want to see all of your logos there, and we want to say that we are going to take the same level of care for these APIs as we did for the original Kubernetes APIs that you know and love. So I want you to think in more generic terms, workload portability, the things that everybody loves about Kubernetes, we should have in there. So if we find ourselves in the weeds, we can always come back in a later revision. But what we do need for Atlanta is something for those people to see. And even if that question is, we don't know where this flit thing is going to turn on until DRA is default in Kubernetes, right? Then as long as we write that down, that's good. Because I know some of you have been asking that we're moving a little bit too fast. So if you have those concerns, please share them with me. Janet is going at the pace which we feel is appropriate, and so does Mario. Does that help clear things up? I want to ensure that everyone's getting a voice because I know a lot of you were feeling that. I know the batch people, the last meeting was their first one, and so we need to make sure that everybody can participate. Yes.
Uh, Hey George, thanks for sharing your perspective from CNCF.
Yeah.
So, when we talk about like Cube, right? When we are working through enhancements or APIs or so on, even like take DRA for example. a lot of care is taken to make sure that the shape of the API is correct and we are designing it the right way and we get it right. We
Right.
typically don't have that, oh, we're going to get DRA out by the end of the year, no matter
Right.
what. So that is the kind of feeling we are getting that, okay, we have this Atlanta thing, but
Right.
it should be okay to just say that we have a conformance group working on it and we are figuring out the details. We shouldn't rush something
Exactly.
out just because we have a date.
Right. And one of the reasons that we're doing these programs is end users have told us that's what they want to hear. You know, so if the answer is that that is the answer, then that's okay. That's why I'm kind of pushing more towards make it as a generic, don't paint ourselves into a corner style. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, Janet, all yours then. As always, listening to your feedback, feel free to PM me, all that good stuff.
Thanks, George. So I want to reiterate some parts of the doc that I feel might not be very clear for everyone because it's a long doc. So I want to focus on basically the process of it. So this conformance is for Kubernetes platform. And then it's applicable to platform vendors, but it will need help from people like hardware vendors, such as accelerators. And then at the bottom of this page, we have a plan for 2025 for KubeCon Atlanta for how we want to go about it. Because we have very limited time, it's unrealistic to have a full set of conformance tests ready for it. So for 2025, the process will be very light and it will be something that looks like this. And this is put up by Mario. And I think he also get some feedback from CNCF about what the questionnaire would look like. So basically, this will become a pull request sent to the CNCF repo, reviewed by CNCF. And in the content, it will be going over all the requirements and only focus on the must. So if you, let's say you implement all the musts and you put the evidence of either documents or some test results, then you can be conformant, or you can say this is really not applicable to my platform. And that could be, the status could be not applicable, then the notes needs to have some justification. And then the results will be published in the CNCF repo for any users to see. And so that's what I want to share when we discuss all the requirements later. So folks don't know how they can prepare for for KubeCon NA.
Go ahead, Kevin.
You're muted, Kevin.
Sorry, yeah, I just had a question about the last thing you were talking about. So, NVIDIA obviously would fill out the section that you were just looking at for part of the stuff that we do. But there's lots of different people in the organization touching lots of different things. Like, some are running workloads, some are building the DRA drivers to interface with things. Would you expect to have multiple individuals within the company filling out this questionnaire? Or would you just want one representative submission for it from each company?
I think it will be one submission per company, but maybe George can help answer this as well, because this is the process that will be defined by CNCF.
I'm not sure. Mario, are you on? Or Jeff?
It also may not be per company, it may be per product that is
Yeah,
adjacent to
that's
this.
what I was thinking. It's kind of because we have lots of different products, we have lots of different projects which would answer these questions differently.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Kevin, Sarah, you guys talked about. That's what we did for the existing conformance program, so we should continue that.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So maybe we can come back to this after Mario or George or Jeff can help us.
Yep, noted. I'll bring it back.
Yeah.
Muano?
So is this self-assessment dependent upon running some suite, or it's just a company or product saying yes? So how do we verify if they said yes, it's actually true or not?
So you will need to provide evidence. That could be a documentation or some test results.
So I think the test results, right? So do we like expect to eventually create a test suite here, which is portable and can be run similar to what we have for the Kubernetes conformance today? I'm asking this because I think without that, this sounds like an RFP process, and it's going to be hard for someone
Yeah.
who's going to say, "Oh, okay, there are like 100 questions," and maybe a company can have a product and overload you with testing results. Like, who's gonna actually sift through that? I did 100 different tests because for each thing I had to install something in a particular way. So who's going to evaluate it, I guess, to say that, oh, okay, did the company did the right thing for a particular product, and now I can approve when it gets added to the list of products that meet the conformance.
So we expect to have conformance tests next year, just because of the timeline. And I think the working group together, we can work on defining what those tests look like as well. And then we will be collaborating with SIG testing for defining those tests and maybe get some additional approval from SIG architecture, just like the standard Kubernetes conformance tests. Then once we have those test suite, then it will be easy for all the platform vendors to just run a test to make sure they are certified. And that could be you run it against every Kubernetes version. And then for users, they can also easily start a creative platform and then verify that, yes, this is really AI conformant.
I think that sounds like a great goal, but is there like any objection here to having the suite first and then only start submitting? Like, there could be issues where there are some submissions that are self-assessments, and then when we actually have the suite, we discover that the assessments were not correct, or we just have to right, just disregard all of the assessments that were done before the suite.
Yeah,
Just
eventually
thinking out loud.
this will be for the lightweight, self-certification. CNCF will need to review every submission.
I think one more challenge with that is, right, the span of the scope is much beyond Kubernetes. So I guess, like, I'm sorry, like, will we be having people who are experts across all the domains that are in the conformance suite to actually go and say, okay, I know each of these areas and I can with confidence say that the evaluation is done correctly? Is CNCF going to like hire people, or who are the people who are actually doing the approval, I guess is my question.
I think looking at the doc, the first version would be fairly straightforward, but going forward, we are going to add more projects in, likely cover projects outside of Kubernetes, then that's when we need to bring in more experts. But that's also when we are going to have real conformance tests. So I think your concerns will be addressed.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to. I'll just let other people speak up. I don't seem like that.
I was going to jump in and suggest that we can do this with versioning so that the self-assessment is, 0.5. And then when we roll out conformance to 0.1 or 1.0, which then has a test suite associated with it, we can watch people progress as they get more granular in their conformance. So I think that it isn't necessarily that it would remove you from being a 0.8 conformant, even though that was self-assessment and somebody looked at it. We could then kind of move it forward in that way. So I think there's good prior art, as Rita points out, from how we did this inside Kubernetes.
Right. And so for this first version of questionnaire, the thinking is that it will expire in a year, so that you don't need to fill out the form again and again. But we expect that we are going to have conformance tests within a year. So when that's ready, then you can just run a test against every Kubernetes version and don't need to worry about the form.
So one more thing, Mrinal, here was trying to figure out, what we are missing, right? So we need a soft launch, so to say, where we put something out and collect, feedback to say, oh, you missed this big chunk, or you didn't cover this. That essentially collect some more information, which will then help us write our test suites better, right? Like if you look at our original test suites for the conformance program that we had earlier, it was just like grab all these tests and add a label to it as conformance. That's what we ended up doing at that time, and that was extremely chaotic. I think having a two-phase approach here might be very useful in even pruning the test. If we feel that in the soft launch, if we see things that are not really necessary, then we can deprioritize those things, and the version 1 will be better off for it, right?
Okay, I think I'm hoping as we go through the process, we evaluate each must with a lens of, oh, can we actually write a conformance test for this that
Absolutely.
work? Yeah.
I'm extremely that's where my head is as well. Like I want to get the things that we are going to test right. I'm not too this thing about hey, we got to do the soft launch in Atlanta per se, but I'm more let's get the set of things right. So even if we just put out here is the test in, and not actually say how we are going to do the soft launch, even that is fine for me. But I would like to focus on the tests, exactly like you said. The other one, other question you had around who will be actually evaluating these artifacts? That is a very good question as well, and I don't think we have, for the Kubernetes conformance program, there was some commitment from CNCF and dollars assigned to actually get some people to evaluate to actually write tests, and also to run the conformance program as well. So I'm hoping that we would get some kind of commitment for this as well.
I think if you have a suite,
how big it's going to be either at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you have a suite, it can run it and we get an answer. It's easier. You can just run it. Absolutely. But if it's documentation and mountains of documentation, I'm not confident. Okay, I personally don't think I can review the whole thing and say if something is conformant. It'll have to be a team. Then if you scale it to how many folks are going to submit this, it'll be a lot of effort. And yeah.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. So let's do what we can first, which is, focus on the tests and get that right.
Okay, any more questions? And maybe we can continue with going through the open questions. Janet, whichever you prefer.
And I think we can go through the open comments.
Yeah, do you want to share the screen or I can?
Okay. Do you want to walk through the open comments, Yuan? Because I need to take notes.
Sure. But yeah, let me take over the screen then.
Okay.
1 second. Can you see my screen? The Google Doc? Okay, so we went over the first one last time. Did we have any additional comments or concerns on that?
I can't see behind your remote desktop. There's some window in front of the document.
Can you see my Google Doc? No?
We can
You've
see
got a
your
window in front
screen.
that says
There's
remote desktop.
That's weird. 1 second. Black
And I
box.
think we saw a Google Doc behind it, but it wasn't a Google Doc. That was just the notes. So I think you're probably trying to share a different doc.
What about now?
That's good.
Okay, weird. It's the same thing. I did exactly the same thing. Okay. No, any comments on the first one that we went through last time?
So I wasn't here last time, but this one's relevant to me. So can you just summarize it real quick?
Yeah, I guess the consensus was like the detailed requirement will come from DRA conformance as a separate conformance. Instead of having everything in this conformance. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong though. Is John
No,
here?
I just read through the discussion there. I think I definitely agree with that. The main point being the last link you have there for certain related features need to become more mature. So I don't think DRA should be a requirement until people are able to easily migrate off of the existing device plugin framework. And we're working on a feature right now that will allow that to happen seamlessly so that you can use DRA drivers to allocate resources that were requested using the device plugin style API with extended resources. So yeah, if we want the score for conformance criteria to move quickly, DRA should not be a hard requirement, but more of a should.
Let me see if we made the changes last time.
Oh,
Yeah,
we said
I already made a change.
must. We said the API is a must, but the drivers, specific driver stuff are should.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking, Kevin, or are you saying something
Yeah,
different?
that makes sense to me. The only thing I'm wondering is if at some point in the future we would want to make it a must, and is there a framework in place to allow us to evolve this, or are we kind of stuck to what we're saying now in these areas?
The goal is to eventually evolve on some of the should requirements into must.
Because the reason I'm thinking about it is like, one big thing that's different between the standard device plugin API for accelerators and DRA is that we advertise all of our resources with a set of attributes hanging off of them in this construct called a resource slice. And it's a cluster-wide object that in theory anyone can get access to. It's in a standard format. And so some of our other components might be developed to assume that these resource slices exist, rather than the old style way of advertising the devices using the device plugin. And at that point, DRA would become a must if we had any requirements around things like that. These are the types of things I'm thinking, and I don't think we're that evolved yet. Where no one's, DRA is so new from the perspective of it being a GA feature that no one should have been relying on these things existing yet. But I could see going forward that we may want to relying on some of the DRA features being present to build up the higher layers of the stack properly.
I don't think we've discussed how we want to transition from should to must yet. If we want to do that, that also requires us to go through all the should items, right?
I think we can finalize the must, and then the should doesn't have the graduation criteria can happen after Atalanta, because we are not really requiring all the should for certification. That doesn't block it.
Would that work, Kevin?
Yeah,
do you
I
have
think
more
so.
suggestions?
So it sounds like we're going to have different versions of the conformance. Like, Sarah was saying earlier, like 0.5 to 1.0 to whatever. And maybe that's the right time to introduce changes from should to must. If you're conformant in version 2.0, then it's a must. If you're conformant in version 1.0, it's a should.
Yeah.
Okay, any more comments on this one? If not, we'll go to the next one then. The second one is regarding security requirement, whether the platform should provide a mechanism for short-lived, automatically managed credentials. This is one of the must item in the proposal, and we need to discuss whether this should be a must or be a should. Go ahead, Manu.
So I view Spiffy Spire as a more general security item rather than tied to specifically to AI. Like, I'm not sure why we need to tie it to AI conformance. It's in general security space.
I agree there. I don't think we see it at all related to AI performance. So it's kind of unrelated to AI unless we're thinking specifically around like data model loading from like object storage, and that's why you're specifically calling this out.
Yeah, if we want something minimal there, I mean, you could have a SIG-store or signature verification of models or artifacts from OCI registry to make sure provenance is proven. But requiring Spiffy Spire in the entirety, I don't think the ecosystem is at the point where the specs even have agent identity figured out. So this seems premature. Just
I think that this is not as much on the training side. I think this is on the agentic side. So like, can agentic pods communicate with agentic pods, or can they communicate with the model, and can they use Kubernetes security perimeters to do that, or do they have to overlay something on top? And today they have to overlay something on top. I agree it's somewhat forward looking, right? So maybe we don't want to specifically say Spiffy Spire, and maybe we don't want to make it a must. But I do think that there is an opportunity here to, it is more general as well, but an opportunity to solve something which comes up in at least some AI workloads that would also be incredibly beneficial for all of Kubernetes.
Yeah, so I put this one there because I think I would like to have at least some requirements for different aspects, different areas in Kubernetes around AI. And this is there specifically for the reasons that Justin mentioned. And also, this is not requiring specific mechanism, but things like space-based buyer or workload identity are examples. I think Derek has a hand as well.
Yeah, so like I like how Justin framed it. To be very clear, I'm supportive of like agent identities being derived from Spiffy Spire and that kind of vision. I just don't think the ecosystem is there yet. And so I view this as an item that should go on a roadmap, but not be defined as a must for the first release of Conformance. And I think this is another example like where I think prior I discussed around it wasn't clear what the audience was necessarily for readers of this doc. So I don't know if we call out agentic 100% or not versus like model inference versus model training, but yeah, I just feel this is premature.
Yeah, I think okay, still more hands. Brandon?
Yeah, that actually kind of raises a good point. I don't know if this has been talked about, and I don't want to add more work for the sake of work, but with the movement towards workload based like scheduling and workload like aware like Kubernetes like mechanisms, I'm wondering if the conformance should take a workload conformance approach to like I'm AI conformant for training or I'm AI conformant for agentic or inference. Like I don't know if it makes sense to do that, but that kind of ties into that last point that was just made of like that was a comment around workload identities for agentic or inference style workloads, where that doesn't really come into play for training and scheduling traditional workloads. I'm not sure if it's something that you care about, but I thought I'd just ask. So.
I think actually I can answer this question quickly. I think I asked exactly the same question maybe a couple of weeks ago. I think the initial goal, if I remember correctly, was not to introduce profiles and define the global AI conformance program, at least initially, because we don't want to go to do details in terms of, distinguish the workloads, because yes, they require a completely different set of primitives and requirements, right, to run. Even on the, on the ML side of things, right? What works for training might not works for inference, right?
Yeah, maybe we should like start going through all the generic AI related ones instead of like the ones that are heavily specific to agentic that may be debatable.
Yeah, I think on actually I want to ask this question about it, right? I think actually what Justin said is right. I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of requirements coming from A2A and MCP to Kubernetes for the long term. I think if we in this group want to kind of ensure those workloads can be run on Kubernetes, we should add this to the goals. As of now, as I can see, we're only focusing on inference, training, and part of ML ops lifecycle. So we don't really speak much about AI ops, right? And how those agents should be orchestrated. I think it's a good goal, good North Star. The question, do we want to include this initially, right? Because then we should, like reiterate on many, many different things.
Ronald, go ahead.
So I think what you said, Andre, makes sense, but I think that's where like we haven't even talked about MCP and A2 and Kubernetes, and like work group AI conformance was just approved, and we are hoping we can have discussions around those topics. So that seems more like forward-looking roadmap, how those things intersect with Kubernetes. And once we have identified patterns, we can consider adding them to a conformance suite.
So this one is more the AI conformance is more about the platform itself. If there are aspects that are ready to be standardized, we can move those there. I think there's the AI integration working group talking about MCP. So maybe that could be discussed there. And when there's some more standard forming, then we can bring it back to AI conformance. So I think for this one, for time's sake, we can just move it to should. Does that sound good for everyone? Yeah, that sounds like the consensus of the working group.
Yeah, I think we can have dedicated discussions in separate working groups, like the integration one and DRA and networking. Right? They all have expertise in those groups, so we can rely on them. Any other comments on this one? Any objections? Okay, sounds good then. Let's move to the next one. The third one is about maintenance and repairs. How to enforce the requirements for device failure detection and maintenance notifications when there are no standardized solutions for that.
So I think this one, I'm not sure if folks who make comments in the doc are here, but basically the requirement is a feedback from SIG nodes. They suggested that we have a way to signal failed devices and to be able to remediate. And the discussion is about lack of a good standard. So I think the node lifecycle working group can potentially help with forming the standard. Oh, Derek has a hand.
Yeah. So I don't think Sergey's here, but I guess to my recollection in NodeSig right now, traditionally like the existing device plugin API, if a device was marked unhealthy, it should have been decremented from a reported node, but it was largely up to the device plugin provider to make sure that that was happening. In the DRA space right now, I don't think we have everything closed up on all potential device failure flows. So I see this as an active area of work in the SIG. I don't know what the explicit test would be to back this up and if it would actually work for anything other than a device plugin implementer right now.
There is work going on in working group device management to add more of this for DRA, but it's definitely not fully there yet. You're right in that.
And it's correct, is that Kevin? Like on the device plugin provider side, it's up to you as a device plugin provider to properly identify your device as unhealthy and eliminate. Yeah.
You have to report that back to the kubelet. It's a weird API, but yes, essentially you have to report it back as the device implementer or the device plugin implementer.
Yeah, and the alpha just went in, so I think that's still some ways off.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. We just need a little help with the notes. I know some of you have set the things and we're not capturing them right. So if you can just take a dip and make sure that we're capturing that, that would really help. Thank you. Sorry.
So since we don't have a clear view of what exactly people can do here, it can't be a must, right? It needs to be a should, at least for the first round. Are we?
I think like from a DRA perspective, like the alpha for this kept just went in, right? So it's at least 2 to 3 releases away, and then we'll also be dependent upon the vendor drivers implementing that functionality. So it seems like a roadmap style thing, which is not ready to be put here yet.
Then the other question, Brunal, is like, what do people do now, right? Like, do they use Prometheus? Do they, what kind of tooling mechanisms do they use currently to detect that there's something wrong? And can we write that up here somewhat?
Derek has his hand up.
Yeah, I'd actually love to hear others, including Kevin, on like the experience that you have. But I guess from my experience, not all failures are necessarily derivable or signaled back through the existing device plugin framework. So yes, in some cases, if the device is unhealthy and it's properly signaled back up through the driver, the existing device plugin API would eliminate that device. My observed experiences is that is not like universally sufficient, and so then people look at other metrics around GPU health and heat and a number of other topics to just try to figure out what's going on with their workload. So it can in some cases be very workload specific for when they discover that their device is unhealthy. I think to the spirit, I really would like it if we can get a clear like signal everyone aligns to, but I don't my observed experience on the stems is that there's you need a holistic set of approaches often tied to your workload to really get a clear signal on this today.
I'm just gonna +1 that. You have to use a lot of Prometheus metrics that are exported through DCGM as well as other things from the hardware as well. I don't think the device is gonna give you the thing that's gonna tell you that it needs to go into maintenance or not, and to be triaged.
Yeah, if we're focusing on GPUs, this is a well-known limitation of a lot of the stuff we've built for Kubernetes until now. And we are working on publishing a new component that can kind of comprehensively get GPU and node health information aggregated in one place to both feed to the device plugins and DRA, as well as to the node problem detector and set health information in all the various places where you might expect it to be. And then have the device plugin or DRA driver then react to that based on what type of information it gets. But GPUs aren't the only accelerator that we're considering here. And so, I think we need to come up with some more general framework than just what we might do for GPUs.
On that note, I think as it's written, it describes the idea of that general framework for sort of when you have these detectors, where do you send that signal to, and like how can we react to it? Like it's a framework for problem surfacing or problem description and the ability to react to it, rather than we must enumerate every single Intel FDiv bug or whatever it might be that gets discovered today. And I think like could we satisfy this requirement with node problem detector, right? And is that like what we would like to bake into our future, or is it a DRA API? I think that's what we need to figure out, is not like, are we able to detect every problem, but when more problems are detected, is there a mechanism, an approved and agreed mechanism that we say, please surface that into this pipeline, and people are watching that pipeline, and that's the right place to do it, type thing.
And not to forget, we need to be able to test this thing, introduce errors, and see if it actually happens.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. Justin, I'm not aware of anything that does failure device detection in something like node problem detector today. I'm supportive of node problem detector. I don't think it's sufficiently broadly used, and it actually could probably use a little more love on the contributor side. But I generally like the spirit of what you were suggesting there. I think in this case, the best we can do is we could point to the existing device plugin contract that says, according to this, if the driver provider does the right thing, the right outcome would happen. I don't know what more we could do, and I think there should be an existing EDA test that actually captures that scenario by my memory. But for DRA, we can't do that yet.
Yeah, I think the key word there is yet, which is again one of these should versus must things where we would need to evolve over time.
Okay,
So I think we can move this to should.
any objections from others? Janet, what does AI stand for here?
AI means action item.
Oh, okay. It's
Yeah,
confusing.
maybe use a different word to do. Yeah.
All right. We have 10 minutes left. I don't know if we'll have time to go over one more, or should we leave some time for some additional like open topics?
Let's do one more for
Okay.
the time's sake.
Yeah, I believe we touched
need
the
to check.
conformance maintainers earlier. But Murano, did we address the question you raised earlier?
I don't think so. But
Okay.
I mean, I'll let you on the agenda.
Okay, I'll leave it here then. Just wanna double check. Okay. Yeah, let's go through the fourth one. Fourth one is about the scope of AI job and inference service metrics collection. The question is, what's the platform's precise responsibility for metrics collection? Is it only to provide a collection system, or does it include providing specific exporters for different AI frameworks?
So this one is not a request for change, but more for clarification. So this is mostly about, because we don't have a standard way for what the AI framework metrics would look like. So this is more about providing a monitoring system that can collect the metrics from the AI workloads, so that, or frameworks, so that users can leverage that. And this is part of the observability item under the observability category under the AI conformance. So that's just a clarification. I think Rita raised this question, so I want to see if Rita has more.
I think I wanted to clarify or make sure we clarify the text to highlight that it's more about making Prometheus available in the cluster rather than about specific ways or the metrics, since there's no standardization today.
Right. So does the language on here good, or do we need further adjustment? Or do we need to keep this part? Because this is mostly for the reason why we need a monitoring system, but I think that it could be interpreted as you must implement this.
Right, especially the linked example. I looked at that list. I don't think any of the example frameworks is actually following or using it, because a lot of them predates that link, I'm guessing. So having it there is quite confusing.
Yeah, maybe like moving the rest of these last two sentences to
yeah,
the
maybe
testing instructions.
Oh yeah, we can do that.
Move them to here.
Okay. Yeah, I'll add an AI for updating the language. And I also talked with the SIG instrument people. They made some recommendation for the Prometheus guideline that the community can follow. But again, we are not really enforcing the metrics itself, because it's up to the AI framework people how they want to implement that. But if there's a standard in the future, it will make it easier for us to test. specific metrics.
I see a couple of hands raised. Murano, you're first.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask, like, whenever we add a must, we should think about if we can write a test for it and what will that look like. So I think Janet just covered that. Because right now, if there's no common standard for what frameworks are going to be used and people will keep on adding more frameworks, do we keep on adding them to the must? That's not going to be sustainable, right? So yeah, it's not clear to me what we can do here unless we have a list of common expected metrics that should be available and we can write a test against.
Yeah, I think I also want to add on this. I think this is pretty much vague for me. I think we should be more explicit on what metrics do we mean here. And like from my point of view, if you're talking about, for example, GPU utilization, like DCGM exporter, right? Is it a must if you're using, NVIDIA GPUs that you must install, DCGM exporter? We're talking about because here, I can see you're talking about job status, throughput, latency, maybe driver utilization. So all those things means different things, right? So for me, it's like unclear right now. What do we mean here by metrics? And maybe we should descope things initially, right?
So this requirement is about the monitoring system like Prometheus, so not enforcing metrics. I'll update the language to make it more clear. This part is more about the reasoning, but not the
So
requirement.
I think if we're talking about Prometheus, we should just say you must install Prometheus if you want to be AI conformant. Probably it's much better word. I don't know what others think about it, rather than saying something about metrics here. But
Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, so the way I look at this right now is like oftentimes metrics collection is separated from like platform metrics versus workload metrics. And in some cases, Prometheus can be deployed twice to support different audiences, to make sure both things can scale independently. And so I looked at this kind of way of the lens of saying, are there metrics that we associate with like the control plane of the cluster that we say should be collected by that source or not? But maybe at the net of it is like, is there a universal signal that each of these components are emitting right now that says you should scrape me? Because right now I think in some cases it's the responsibility of the distribution provider to make sure that the right targets are actually being scraped or not. And so maybe making sure there was a clear signal for that. And then maybe from a requirement standpoint, you could make sure that the provider isn't doing anything to prevent like accessing over the pod network, that particular metrics endpoint. But beyond that, I'm not sure how to test, to Renald's point. But I think if you advertise an endpoint, we should at least make sure that that endpoint is reachable. That's maybe the extent of what I could imagine the test covering right now.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. I'll add that to how we might test it. I think we're at time.
The only thing on this must versus just should is like, again, comes into like an edge location. So if you're doing inference at the edge, it's really hard to run Prometheus on that same device often. So I think we have to be open to deployment topologies where your Prometheus might be running centralized external from your cluster, for example. So yeah, just a caveat on that must versus should. We got to be careful on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so seems like we are running out of time. I think we're making good progress today, and we can move the items that were not resolved to the next meeting. And feel free to add any topics to the Google Doc. And I think that's it for today. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Um,